All right, Awesemo, here we go. Thank you for joining us here. Apologies for the delay. There was a little scheduling snafu. NFL lock or NBA lock 7:30. Kind of a little bit random, but that's okay. We are here. We are live. We are ready to go. I'm joined once again by Kyle Dvborchak, reprising our roles from last night. And shout out to everybody that got all the screenshots. Kyle, we had like 100 likes and my notifications were just off the charts. I'm like, I didn't tweet anything last night. I went to bed relatively early. What did I do? And no, it was phenomenal. We love seeing when other people have success. That makes all of the hard work that we do well worth it, because this is a labor of love a lot of times. So we'll put our lineups and our stuff ahead of the content, which is how it should. So it's great to see your success. We feel that's partly our success, but you guys do all the hard work. You sift through all of the information we provide and come up with those lineups. I don't press the buttons for you. Kyle doesn't either, but definitely was a good one last night. Let me get a couple things set up. A little bit of a scramble there. I was doing NBA, which was fun. This is your last chance to get the promo code Caruso. You get everything for NBA through the 29th. So this was kind of a diminishing return. So for $1, you get one more day, which, by the way, well worth it just for $1 in any event. So definitely want to check that out. We got a bunch of other stuff going on that we'll talk about, but since we do have an abbreviated amount of time here, I want to make sure we get in all of our content. So that's going to be important. A couple other housekeeping items at the top here as we wait for some people to meander on in. The important thing is our inactives. Nothing overly crazy. Damian Harris is inactive. It's running back for the Patriots. He missed last week as well, so that's no big surprise. I believe John Brown is also not been activated off of the injured reserve. There was some discussion that may happen today. I believe the Bills made a couple of roster changes that would have facilitated or potentially facilitated something like that, but they really, why risk him? They're going to need him for the playoffs. Interesting history in this series. I read this article last night and I didn't write it down, but I believe the Patriots have won. I believe they have won like 35 of the last 40 meetings between these two teams.
I mean, I'm not surprised. The Bills have been trash for most of the past decade or whatever. And on the other hand, like most teams would have that kind of record, even if you were a good team, you'd have that kind of record against, Belichick and the Patriots. So technically John Brown was activated off IR. Then they immediately put him on the reserve COVID list, which I don't necessarily
did they really?
Get. I mean, he's not playing, so it changes nothing, but
right. But that seems kind of
weird. I know.
Odd.
That's what I thought too. It's like the same thing with Jared Goff's situation where they're like,
so that was announced at 4:15 or 4:18, courtesy of Roto World here. He was a close contact of TJ Yeldon, but we knew TJ Yeldon was positive. All right. It's 2020. Things happen. We don't have time to figure out what the hell they're doing and not doing. Yeah. So he's out regardless of the reason. That's going to open up or continue to keep open Cole Beasley and Stephon Diggs. Of course, Bill Belichick's going to try to make sure that they are not open. A couple other things I do want to mention. Follow us on Awesemo NFL. Sorry, I'm breaking up here. Over on Twitter. So emotional. We're about to get 10,000 followers. Kyle, can you chat for a second? I'm going to get a cough drop here.
Yeah, go for it. I am trying to look. So I looked at the Bills inactives and I did not see Tyler Kroft. He wasn't listed on, I don't think IR or anything before that. I think he was injured earlier in the year. So I'm going to refresh our projections. He was kind of one of the few players that I'm not interested in. Like, you have to play in really large field contests to get to someone like Kroft. Do you know if he's playing? He wasn't inactive, but there could be a chance that I missed him getting put on some list or something.
So here's the interesting thing. So there's a few people that are saying I'm not seeing an official source though. Here's one. Glad to see Tyler Kroft back for this one, but they're quoting the fact that the Buffalo Inactives does not have him. Here we go. Bills Wire 50. I'm going to assume that Bills Wire is going to get it. They have 11,000 followers. They say Tyler Kroft active in lieu of John Brown on the COVID list. This is important. So he is someone that, and let's actually just jump to this because this is going to kind of change how potential builds can be made, because he is one of our somewhat discounted guys. So the keynote on this, as I said, for the last 4 games, Dawson Knox has 16 targets and 99 yards. He does have 3 touchdowns in that stretch, while Lee Smith, who is active tonight, has mostly been a blocker. I think he's had like 9 or 10 routes. He has 3 targets, 1 reception for 3 yards. We have kind of H-back tight end. It depends what deep data source you go to. Some have him listed as a running back. Some have him listed as a tight end, but it's Reggie Gilliam. He's out with the hamstrings. We know that. So I had said, this looks like Tyler Kroft might be active for the first time in weeks. In the 6 games he has played this season, he has 16 targets, 119 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And it's basically the same production that Dawson Knox has had. We know that much like Russell Wilson, Josh Allen does spread the touchdowns around, and he does go who it's going to be. I want to say off the top of my head, I think they have 8 or 9 of the 30 touchdowns that he has, 7, 8, or 9. I forget what the exact number is, but it's a reasonable proportion. The last 4 years, Russell Wilson had like 32% went to tight ends. This year, not so much, but it's one of those trends where it's like, that's part of the play calling, the system, the what they feel comfortable to or for, et cetera. So it's not always going to be, a Stephon Diggs fade to the corner or whatever it might be. They look for the tight ends a lot. So this was key information to have. It's a dart throw, but it's something that we're going to need with some of these expensive players. At the top, before I got all emotional, not even verklempt. It was just an overwhelming. It was like a hot flash, except I'm not, a 55-year-old middle-aged woman here. But we're just shy of going to 10,000 followers on Awesemo NFL. Jump on there, follow us. I'm sure we'll have a nice little giveaway once we get there. We do also have a giveaway on our main channel. Let me drop that into the Slack chat. This is the last Monday Night Football giveaway. So if you enter this, you've got the instructions up there on the pinned tweet, but you're choosing, does Cam Newton or Josh Allen run for more yards? The correct winners of that question will be put into a random drawing amongst all of the other winners, and we'll get a free Awesemo NFL full year pass. So you'll want to check that one out. And then let's see, there was one other thing, free content tonight. That is the Showdown rankings. Let me drop that link into chat, and you guys can have some fun with that. Notable inactives, we had kind of mentioned Damian Harris, and then we had pivoted to talk about Tyler Kroft here likely being active. It's so weird that you just don't get a, hey, here's the 54 or 52, whatever it is these days, number of active guys, but we don't seem to get those. But I think he's active is my guess. We'll have to keep an eye on Twitter. Chat, you're our best resource for this. You can look for a lot of the sources, help us out, and I'm sure News God is on the hunt here. Okay, so let's talk about the actual football tonight. So we have the Buffalo Bills that can still improve their playoff seeding. There's only going to be 1 first round bye this year, because there are going to be 7 teams from each conference make it. There's 3 games on the first Saturday, 3 games on the first Sunday. Right now it's Kansas City, but Buffalo, I think Buffalo still is mathematically able to catch them. They have the tiebreaker, Buffalo does, over the Steelers. So and the Steelers ended up winning yesterday. So Buffalo needs to win. But if they come in tied through the end, they'll have home field advantage, at least over everybody but the Chiefs, if the Chiefs keep winning. Point of all of this is, seems silly to rest the players, right? There's still improvement that can be had here. Home field advantage still does mean something, even in our pandemic times. So let's see. With this one here, I've said Josh Allen has taken the next step among quarterbacks. You'll like this one, Kyle. In his first 28 games as a starter, he had 30 touchdowns, 21 interceptions. He did have a whole passel of rushing touchdowns, which kept his fantasy value alive. 17 rushing touchdowns in those 28 games. This year, through 14 games, so basically half the number of games, he has the same number of passing touchdowns, 30. We're not doing cartwheels, but that's not horrible. He has 8 rushing touchdowns on the ground. He has multiple touchdowns in 12 of 14. However, this matchup against New England was one of the 2 where he did not. What do you want to do with this information. And I see someone asking in premium chat, we have a 0-0 projection on Croft. I don't know for certain that he's active. It seems like he would be. And we've run into this so many times where it's these super duper bench type players that get active and we don't know. And then people bitched at us on Twitter because we didn't rank. So-and-so caught, 2 catches for 17 yards, similar to Tavon Austin. We said, man, it's not going to happen. Well, he had 2 catches for 7 yards or whatever. We were wrong. We set the over-under on routes at 3.5 last night.
Do we know how many routes he ran, though?
We may not have been wrong on that. I didn't think he would catch a ball.
We were probably wrong.
I'm sure we were wrong.
So I found the Bills.
Okay.
So I know I don't know if all teams do this, but on their PR, which is not their actual Buffalo at Buffalo Bills, I would assume, it's their PR Twitter. They actually do have the full roster and Croft is on it. So he's 100% playing tonight.
Okay.
It's him, Knox, and Lee Smith, Reggie Gilliam. As you said, I don't know what he's dealing with because why do I care what Reggie Gilliam is dealing with? But he's out. Knox and Croft are probably the number 1 and 2. Like you said, his numbers were kind of Croft-esque. I don't think there's that huge of a difference. So I would assume we will have those projections updated at some point before lock because we've got some time. But if you're, I don't know, what do you want to set his projection at? 2.5 points?
I was thinking 3.3. So not a lot. Again, but this is
worth considering.
Potential for a lottery ticket touchdown. That's all we're looking at here. And then it's salary savings. This is not the equivalent of anything in NBA like we saw in Tarian Prince starting tonight. He's going to get 22 fantasy points at 3,100 on DK. Okay, that's valuable. We made fun of Tavon Austin. I take Tavon Austin's production from last night for Tyler Croft tonight just to have that is the floor and a chance of a touchdown. So set our expectations and then move him a little lower. He's in the player pool.
He's in the player pool is exactly how you should describe him. He has not been ruled out of the player pool. He stands head and shoulders above the likes of TJ Yeldon and John Brown or whatever. And that's about all we can say for him. In terms of Allen, I mean, you named all the things. This is a really, these are the kinds of showdown plays I struggle with because we are going to get probably Allen leading the slate in ownership at the captain spot by 7 to upwards of 10%, depending on what type of contest you're playing in. And I'm almost always looking to pivot down to the number 1 receiver if they're going to be lower owned, to the opposing running back if they're going to be lower owned. We do have a slight advantage in terms of the top scoring probability versus captain ownership with Josh Allen, but we have a massive advantage with Stephon Diggs. So when I'm looking at my lineups, if you were to be able to calculate their EV, Josh Allen lineups at captain can still be plus EV. It's just that I am going to get more plus EV. I'm going to be even more advantageous playing Stephon Diggs lineups. So I'm trying to run through all the combinations that I think are feasible of Diggs lineups that probably still have Allen in the flex. It's simply that I think I gain more of an advantage on the field by playing Stephon Diggs at captain, given his ownership and then his top scoring probability, which is basically the same. I mean, it's technically slightly higher than Josh Allen. So I get everything that's desirable about Allen to play him at captain. I'm probably relegating him simply to the flex. I would understand why you would play him at captain. I think maybe the route to go with is if you're playing him at captain, you could easily fade Diggs. And if Diggs just drops 6 for 70 or something, that's good. That's 13 points. But at his price, is that enough? That probably means that Cole Beasley went 100 and a touchdown, or Gabriel Davis hit a long one. Even Tyler Croft or Dawson Knox probably found the end zone. And one of the nights where we're saying, how the hell I think Tyler Croft literally has a 2 touchdown game. I think Reggie Gilliam scored once at some point.
He does, and I think he was inactive on either side of that game too. Tyler Croft. Yeah.
Oh man, that is yeah. So, Isaiah McKenzie, I think has a score. All of these random guys. I think there are 9 or 10 players on this team with a touchdown. No one is over 6, and that's Gabriel Davis of all players. The touchdowns have been so randomly distributed, and they're not perfectly correlated with the volume, unfortunately, that I do think. That's you'll probably end up asking me at some point, who am I most afraid of? It's probably going to be no Josh Allen captain because he has such the propensity to distribute the ball to non-Stephon Diggs guys, especially when they're looking to score. And then he can score on his own. Like you said, the rushing yardage this year hasn't been incredible. That's because his throwing has been, but he still finds the end zone. So those are the selling points on someone like Josh Allen at captain. I'm simply looking at the selling points of Stephon Diggs, where I'm seeing that, he leads the league in receptions, top 5 in receiving yards. And although sure, his touchdown production hasn't been up to par, the volume metrics say that he should be easily leading this team in touchdowns. That's typically the best way we have to predict touchdowns. It's just volume and good volume for Stephon Diggs. So I'll probably have a lot of both, but I'm only really going to be playing one at captain. And for me, that sticks.
All right. Chat's having a little fun at my expenses. EMac talks to himself. EMac never shuts up. Here's the trick. I know how to intonate and make you guys hear my voice by changing it to a little voice modulation. You guys think I'm talking a lot. I'm really not. We used to do this with Fast Eddie Fair. He'd usually talk 75 to 80% of our shows. And people would say I talked too much. I went back and timed them just to make sure, not to fear. These are just little tricks that I'm doing. And then because I do something different than other people, which makes you a good orator or speaker. And that tends to be with my dramatic pauses that aren't so dramatic, but it breaks things up. And you guys think I'm talking more than I really am, because when I'm going to say something, it's going to be worth your while. Is that a piggy bank behind me? No, it's actually a light and it's about this big. Let me know and I'll show it after the show. EMac puts the E in excited. I like, thank you. EMac is the GOAT. Thank you. Get him, EMac. Thank you. This is not a get him. This is just saying that I know how it works. You hear me because I make sure you're going to hear me. And then you want to hear the analysts. Guess what? So do I. So we'll make sure that's going to happen. Let's look at the running backs here. Over the last 8 weeks, Devin Singletary and rookie Zach Moss have basically split the snaps. We mentioned earlier, TJ Yeldon is going to be out with COVID. I thought we might luck into one, and luck, I don't want, maybe contact tracing, but not actually getting COVID would have been the way to go, but they're both active tonight. The issue is Singletary kind of priced like an RB1, Moss not much of a discount, and these guys are literally splitting the work. Over their last 8 weeks, they are almost dead even on snaps. It's fluctuated a little bit between games. There was one outlier that was also on, I think that was that Monday night game in was it against Pittsburgh or San Francisco?
It was against San Francisco. Oh, I remember that game. So I had
early
some Zach
fumble.
Moss.
The other guy, it was 85%, 15% split. Otherwise, it's literally been 55, 45 or closer, and just flip it for the last 2 months. So that's going to make it a little bit tricky here. Moss is getting more carries. However, Singletary has been getting more targets. They're both getting about the same amount of carries, but they seem to prefer Moss in the red zone a little bit, but then Josh Allen is basically their number one red zone back. I don't like either of these guys. I have set a hard rule saying I'm only playing one of them tonight. I've already got all my rules set up, so I'll just go in and tweak some percentages here in Crunch Lineup, so I don't have to worry about that. But, or you guys won't have to worry about me scrambling on air code. You're going to see me scramble on air because that's just what I do. But I'm not excited about any of these guys. I thought about a global rule, Kyle, of playing only one running back in this entire game. That's how much I think these quarterbacks are their number one rushers for those crucial situations. Do you see anything here within the running backs for Buffalo? And then we'll get into the receivers.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, this team is like bottom 5 in overall running back rush attempts. They have done I'll say a really good job. I mean, I'm sure some like old school football head would say that you got to establish the run more, but they have done a really good job recognizing that Josh Allen has been dominant this year. Like maybe not MVP level, but at some points he has been playing up to that. It's just like Rodgers has been so good. So is Mahomes. He's like tier 2 MVP caliber. So they're just throwing the ball at one of the highest rates when you adjust for the game script they play in, which is generally positive. So they don't run the football a lot. And like you said, when they do, there's no guarantee that it's even one of the running backs. It could very well be a Josh Allen run, especially at the goal line. So I don't have a ton of interest in them, although we have a slight, even though it's a very small percentage point, we do have a slight advantage versus the field with Zach Moss at the captain spot. I think I'm just going to be pushing that to probably being more interested in him at the flex. Like you said, they've split work perfectly. You may have some red zone equity in Zach Moss, and I just think his ownership is generally going to be lower, probably because people are just looking at, the box score and seeing that, well, they trade off volume, but it's been a slight advantage almost consistently throughout the year when Zach Moss is healthy. It's only a slight advantage. And it's, I think if you look at the averages, it's probably a bit skewed because the average includes the one game where Zach Moss was benched for almost the entirety of the game. I know he was. I played a lot of him on that slate, I believe. So it wasn't great. I watched him fumble. He fumbled in his own end zone. It was I think it was like a muffed handoff from Josh Allen. Jeff Wilson, I believe, scored immediately after that. And we almost saw none of him again. Outside of that one game, it's been a slight advantage for Moss. I think people are just going to look at this backfield and fade it outright. If they get up to a pretty big lead, which they're like a solid, I believe, touchdown favorite in this game, that could be the one scenario where we really do see a running back get, 15 carries, let's call it. I'm fine betting on that if the field is not going to be too inclined to do so. Right now, we have like about 20% flex ownership for Zach Moss. I think that's fair. I think that's enough for me to at least match the field with him. And I'm going to be very under the field on Devin Singletary just because I think their roles are even. Singletary is slightly more expensive and is going to be at least a decent bit more popular. All of those factors, I think I'm fine taking a little bit of an edge in Zach Moss and pushing it over someone like Singletary.
All right, big ask here. Get us to 250 likes. I will drop in my head-to-heads for DK. We have 20 minutes left. We're going to go lickety-split through the rest of this. Once we get to the Patriots, it's going to be pretty quick. And then we will have time for questions. We'll talk strategy and we'll talk some lineup construction. So wide receiver here for the Bills. We have Stephon Diggs and Cole Beasley. We do not have to worry about John Brown. He is not active for tonight. We have Gabriel Davis, who's no longer cheap. He's been priced up. He's carrying everything on his touchdowns. I believe he scored in 4 of the last 6 weeks. He's getting maybe 5 targets a game. You're hoping for a big one here. He could get it because Stephon Diggs is going to get a lot of the attention from Coach Bill Belichick and the secondary. The league in heading into week 16 leads the league in targets, leads the league in receptions, and was 4 yards behind Travis Kelce. However, he only has 5 touchdowns. As Kyle pointed out, the touchdowns are just kind of spread everywhere. So the question is, and we heard this earlier today, if you got to listen to the morning strategy show with Dave Loughran and Matt Kajeski and Alex Brown, former defensive end for the Chicago Bears, he was saying he thinks that that'll be the guy that they try to take out Diggs being. And he was making a case for Diggs not being in the captain spot here. I kind of agree with it. I want Josh Allen in my captain spot. We'll have that discussion again in a couple minutes here because you're talking about doing things a different way for what you're doing. But I think Cole Beasley is probably my number 2 or 3 guy. We are paying full freight for his price. But he has basically done everything that Diggs did over the last 4 of the last 5 weeks, which has been pretty damn impressive how consolidated things have gone to these guys. This is not the Cole Beasley who's the 3rd or 4th wide receiver for Dallas. This is a legit number 2 option. He has putting up numbers over the last 6 weeks that would be number 1 on a lot of teams. Talk to us about the Buffalo receivers.
Yeah, I think you laid it out pretty well. Gabriel Davis has just been like feeding on touchdown efficiency. I mean, he's like clearly the number 3 receiver and hasn't even been the number 3 receiver the whole season. And he leads the team in touchdowns. Like, I think he's kind of an interesting fade. I'll just see what his ownership is, but it's just simply that his touchdown rate is unsustainable and his price doesn't really reflect that. He should be priced down probably another 1,000 or so to be like a good median projection value relative to, like the kickers. The kickers project as good values on this slate. Even some of the expensive guys like a Stephon Diggs still projects as a good value. The same with Jacoby Myers. I think Davis is just slightly off of that. He's like a 2nd or 3rd tier value on this slate. So maybe an argument to fade him can be made. I do think if we end up getting the shutdown treatment on Stephon Diggs, I actually don't buy into that as much. Like, I know that's what Bill Belichick wants, but like, I'm sure every team wants to stop the opposing team's best player. It's just that few defenses actually have the personnel to do that. That sometimes comes to fruition with a team like the Patriots because they do have good defensive personnel. But we know in the modern state of the NFL, the better offenses are generally going to win out against defenses. The rules are skewed that way. I think, honestly, the talent in terms of quarterback talent is skewed that way. If they want to get Stephon Diggs the ball, which they've done all season, I think although maybe they're less likely to this game than they would be against the Jaguars, I still think it is more probable than not that Stephon Diggs has a good game. So I'm fine with playing him there, but I get that argument. If you buy that, I think you have to be going all in on Cole Beasley. Like, Cole Beasley has been dominant with John Brown out, like legitimately 300-yard games in 6 contests with John Brown out, averaging nearly 80 yards and like 6 or 7 receptions. He's been really, really good. So I would think if you are not playing Stephon Diggs, you're kind of just, I would honestly lock button Beasley at captain, because I think if you think Diggs gets shut down, Beasley almost out of necessity. And I actually have some Beasley lineups at captain, so I don't think this is a bad play, but Beasley out of necessity, if Stephon Diggs isn't going to be a good play on this slate, it's going to be Beasley or it's not going to be the Bills. This is probably, the Bills don't run the football. If they're not getting there through the air, they're just not getting there outright. I think that's possible. We see games all the time. Jets versus Raiders, Jets versus Rams, Jets versus Browns. Basically, the recent history of a bad team in the Jets should show us that, yes, Vegas lines are good, but they're not infallible. So
Hey, 2-game winning streak with the Jets. Come on.
They're playing. I don't know if they're playing better, actually. I'm not even sure if that's true. Well, they have to be playing better, but they also got to face like Jared Goff, who's I think bad, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, honestly. I guess the point being that like, yes, Vegas lines are very accurate, but there are large error bands on them. It's just they're right more often than wrong, or they're close to right more often than wrong. So I would say if you think somehow the Patriots pull this off, like that is the perfect scenario in which you probably fade Diggs. Maybe you could play like solo Allen. I think like solo Tannehill lineups were pretty good last night. So maybe you play solo Allen, but honestly, I'd just be looking for a cheap guy, like a maybe a Beasley, but more so a Davis or someone. Even go cheaper in that same price range for the Bass or Croft, and go like onslaught. Go onslaught Patriots. So for me, it's close to Diggs or bust. It's Diggs or bust with a little contingent of some Cole Beasley ownership and captain. I think he's been incredible. Even when Diggs is good, Beasley is also good. So it's Diggs or bust. Small amount of Cole Beasley ownership in there at captain. I still think I'm going to end up being over the field on him just because it doesn't take a lot. Everyone wants to play Allen. Everyone wants to play Diggs. Some Cam Newton contingent as well. My biggest shift is going Diggs in the captain predominantly. I think there is an argument to be made, and I have lineups built on this, so I can't poo-poo the shutdown treatment too much. There's an argument to be made that sure, Diggs could not go out and play well, or Beasley could just match him, not out of randomness, but out of being pretty good in his own right. So I think I'm a little more on board with Diggs than you, mostly because of ownership specifically. I think the ownership points me towards playing a Diggs, but I also agree with the Beasley sentiment more so than anything else.
All right, 14 minutes left. Come on, hit that like button. Get up to 250. We're closing in on it, and I'll drop some head-to-heads there on DraftKings. We're going to talk a little no-house advantage in just a second here. We sort of covered the tight ends. Here's going to the chase. Alex has now projected Tyler Kroft for a whopping 0.78 DraftKings points. He is ahead of Lee Smith, who is at 0.42. So we do want to say this is, strategy play. I believe someone last night got a little bit worried when he saw that he had a captain spot, Geronimo Allison. That would be me. Hey, it worked out. That Geronimo Allison did well. My lineup did not cash that one.
Wait, are we talking about Equanimous St. Brown?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was laughing at their names, and you're right. I was telling my wife, Equanimous St. Brown, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Geronimo Allison. She's like, who are these guys? I'm like, no, they're wide receivers. She's like, are these made up names? Like, no, they're actually receivers. So there we go. Let's advantage projections. The question for you, Kyle, as we head into the Patriots here, we have our 2 interception numbers. These are usually the better props that you can go after here. 1/2 or 0.5 interceptions. We're saying 85% chance that Josh Allen throws an interception. We are saying 77% chance that Cam Newton throws an interception. I double down on both of them.
Yeah. I mean, like Allen, like you said, he's gotten better on his interceptions, but he's still, like every quarterback does, but even him more so than the real elite of the elite quarterbacks, still throws some interceptions. And I think in terms of Cam Newton, he's just kind of been dusted as a quarterback. It's unfortunate, but he has been he's thrown way more. I think it's like 5 to 10 touchdowns to interceptions. And this is a spot where they may actually be forced into throwing the football more, which has not been this offense or Cam Newton's MO. Yeah, Cam Newton feels like, I know our projections kind of have it, I think, the other way by a slight margin. Cam Newton feels like a lock throwing interception on any given game. Josh Allen also plus beneficial odds there.
All right. They're saying 250 likes and EMac will do a keg stand. I probably last did a keg stand. Oh, I have done them. Kyle may not have been born. So Jordan probably wasn't either. So there you go. Yes, I am older than dirt at this point. All right. Defenses. I'm not overly excited. If I was going to take one, it would be the Bills. We're not getting much of a discount against them. There's just not a lot of passing opportunities as we start to talk here about Cam Newton. The Patriots basically have the least everything in passing. This is where they're at. Cam Newton averaging 183 passing yards per game ahead of only Sam Darnold, Andy Dalton, and Tua Tagovailoa. By the way, all those guys have either had major in-game injuries or been benched mid-game. Newton has had that been benched a couple times, but it was well late into the game. We have Newton here, who is rushed for 11 touchdowns and 489 yards on 112 carries. However, only 2 rushing touchdowns in the last 5 games. In 4 of his last 6, he has failed to top 120 passing yards. What are you doing with this running back playing quarterback being with a salary like a mid-level quarterback.
Yeah, I think the salary is why he remains in play. If he was priced like he was earlier in the year, I think it made some sense to fade him because he just stood like he's never going to threaten for the 300-yard bonus at this point. Like, watch, he'll go out and do it now. I think he has 1 or 2 games.
Seattle, and I bet against it too.
Yeah, like that is the one
you
chance.
monkey knife fight.
And the thing is, it needed to happen versus a terrible Seattle defense when Seattle was also playing fun, let Russ cook style. And before Cam Newton kind of fell off the map, he was playing all right early in the year, and it's kind of come apart, at the seams. Everything had to fall in place for him to get 300 yards. So there was just no chance of it happening since then, essentially. I still think it's okay to play Newton because of his price. I think maybe the most interesting thing is that it's very easy to run 5 Bills with 1 Cam Newton back. If you can find the price, it is kind of expensive to stack up on these Bills. But if you can find it in the pricing range, it makes a ton of sense. Like we saw, I think it was Ryan Tannehill's solo lineups versus 5 Packers worked out very well because he got the 1 rushing touchdown and his offense was terrible. That sounds exactly like what is like the standard median projection for this Cam Newton led New England offense. Is the offense is bad, but he's very live to score if not multiple rushing touchdowns. So I think Cam Newton is made in that kind of way because I think people are generally not going to move towards those kinds of lineups. I think 5-1s, as I talked about in different shows, especially when you have a good spread like this, are simply under-owned. So I think Cam Newton is maybe best deployed in that method. He's okay at captain even because I talk about the reason I think Diggs is better than Allen at captain or more advantageous for the style I'm playing is because if Allen goes off, although it's not guaranteed, there's a good chance that Diggs could pass him just based on the literal scoring. Necessarily you get more points for the yards and the receptions and the touchdowns. So Cam Newton doesn't necessarily have that guy. I think it's very possible to play him at captain just with 1 receiver. I'm still favoring Diggs. I think Diggs is the best captain play of this slate, but I do think there are some interesting approaches where you just play Cam Newton with at most 1 other guy in the lineup and then run Bills back, whether that be 5v1 or 2v4 on the other side. Cam Newton captain. I do think he has some interesting properties I don't think he's a great player, but the way he scores makes him an interesting 1 of 1 or 1 of 2 Patriots lineups type of guy.
All right, we've got 8 minutes left. You hit the like button. I did drop those in chat or DK into the lobby. $1 head-to-heads username EMac. Finishing up No House Advantage. You can sign up there with the promo code Awesemo. Get up to $20 matched with your first deposit. Refer a friend. When they make a deposit, you will get $5 in No House cash. My lineup does include Tyler Kroft in my cash game lineup. So there you go. Enjoy. Jordan, you better jump in on that fun. Getting back to my notes page here, running backs, Damian Harris out. I think Sony Michel becomes a little bit more interesting. You've got fullback Jacob Johnson. He's played 20 to 30% of the snaps every game. He has 8 targets on the year, 9 targets on the year, doesn't have a carry. Forget about him. James White hasn't had more than, I think, 6 combined targets and carries maybe twice this season. He's been dealing with personal tragedy, missed a few games, but this has just been a nothing season for him. He has not had more than 5 carries in any game, just 31 on the year, 2 touchdowns on the ground, none receiving. In his last 4 games, he has topped 2 receiving yards once. He has 2, 1, -1, and I think 22. It's just not great for him. Julian Edelman's not back, so you got Jacoby Myers. Yeah, he's got Cam Newton throwing to him. You got Damari Bird, who is averaging 6 targets per game over the last 5. That's the same as Jacoby Myers. Those are the 2 I'm interested in. N'Keal Harry playing 4.9. The tight ends, Ryan Izzo's on injured reserve. So you've got Devin Asiasi and Dalton King. However, they're not getting targets. The entire position has averaged 2.1 targets per game this year. So not really a lot to look here. What do you want to do with the running backs and receivers are going to be the key here. Any highlights you want to hit as we have 7 minutes to lock?
I think if you're fading Cam Newton, Sony Michel makes some sense because he has the potential to steal touchdowns, although you can just fade the whole offense. There's a very distinct possibility they just come out and play terribly. So you only need the one guy who scores the touchdown or just gets 6 for 60 in terms of, Jacoby Myers would probably be the most likely, but any one of them can do it. Damari Bird is basically equaling him in air yards since N'Keal Harry returned to the lineup. I think Michel serves an interesting value in that sense, and he should see almost all of the carries in terms of the non-quarterback carries. James White averaging like 3 or fewer carries per game this year. seems just about as likely to get 0 carries as he is to get, we'll call it 4. So I think Michel, as a player who can score a touchdown without helping anyone else on his team, has potentially negative correlation with someone like Cam Newton. Actually, probably an uncomfortable amount of Michel because, well, I don't think he's that good of a player. I don't really care. I think he's in an interesting spot on this slate because we know of all teams, New England is probably one that even as they're losing doesn't concern themselves too much with like playing fast and passing the football, still fine with just running it. James White, I struggle to see I don't know. I don't think there's a ton of upside with James White. He's not going to get a ton of carries. He's not going to get a ton of targets in the most like Myers, Bird even are going to probably see more air yards. So I'm not sure how much of a ceiling there is for White, but if he goes out and catches 8 passes and this offense is terrible, it won't matter. That 8 passes, even if it's for 20 yards, could lead his team in scoring. I think I'm probably lower on him than the public is. I don't think he's an egregious play though. I just think Michel probably comes in at similar, if not lower ownership for a similar price essentially, and we haven't projected higher. So I think Michel's probably one of my favorite of, maybe you could call them the non-obvious Patriots, because I think like Newton and Myers would kind of be the obvious Patriots as I'd call them.
All right. What do you think the odds are of Cam getting benched today?
15 or 20. 10 or 15%. If he goes out, the thing is, I'm not too concerned with that because if he go for the most part, if he goes out and plays terribly, he's not going to be in the optimal lineup anyways. Like if he goes out, no touchdowns, 2 picks, it's not like that fourth quarter was what was going to save you from paying for that. Like you would have been better off almost certainly just swapping him for Cole Beasley or swapping him for Jacoby Myers. The list goes on and on. So I wouldn't concern myself with that too much, but it is a distinct possibility. Maybe we can hustle those fourth quarter showdown lineups with some Jared Stidham, who in his own right is terrible.
Yeah, I don't think he's worth putting in, but then again, I got my ass kicked by David Carr and Tua Tagovailoa on the last 2 of the last 4 primetime slates. Anybody you are, as we have 4 minutes to go, anybody you're terrified of not having enough of?
I don't know. It'd probably be Josh Allen captain, or maybe Dawson Knox. His price just makes him like he needs a touchdown to pay off his price. And if he goes 1 for 8 and a touchdown, he actually isn't even guaranteed to make it. There are some cheap guys who could get there on like PPR value in the same price range. So it would be like that specific combination. It's going to be Josh Allen to it's like a Tyler Kroft. If Kroft scores the random touchdown that isn't like Isaiah McKenzie, who I probably have more of, that's going to be a bad day for me.
How much Isaiah McKenzie do you have?
A lot. I'd have to pull up because I have we didn't have any crazy late breaking news, so all my lineups were done.
I have 32%, 4% captain.
I don't have any captain, but I probably have more in the flex than you do. Just makes things work so well, even if they go and score 4 points.
Did he make your article, the free article you have?
I don't know. Actually, I don't even think I wrote him up either. It was just he kind of projected well, but I don't know how much ceiling there is for him. I guess a touchdown is the ceiling. I think
right.
We could throw out like Dalton Keene is in that same vein. Dalton Keene honestly is probably, and Tyler Kroft actually make for really good leverage plays because I'm playing to chalk Isaiah McKenzie, and I know that I've faded Josh Allen captain, and I've made some different like I'm fading Devin Singletary, going with Zach Moss over him. So in those spots, given like leaving salary on the table as well, I think in the small-ish field contest, I have leveraged myself enough that I'm okay playing the chalk Isaiah McKenzie. Like there's almost no such thing as like too much leverage in these crazy like 100 train type of winning lineups in that Millie Maker style, play action style, where I almost think there's almost no such thing as like getting 2 off the board. Kroft and Keene both make for really good pivot points off of McKenzie. I didn't get to any like crazy enough large contests where I have to do that. But if you are playing in those, I would definitely be making it a point to place that pivot into my lineup.
All right, we have 2 minutes to go here until a lock. Just seeing if there's any questions. If you're fading one, Diggs or Allen, I'm going to say fade Diggs. Kyle's going to say fade Allen. So we're not being helpful there. But by fade, I mean put him in the flex spot. I don't think you go full fade on either one. If it is, for me, it would be Diggs. Last 2 spots, James White and Tyler Bass, or Bird and Gabriel Davis. I'm going to type that in chat.
James White, Tyler Bass, or Bird and Davis. Probably the
Bird and Davis.
Bird and Davis, yeah.
There we go. That's the one I was going with. All right. By the time you guys hear this, we're going to be at lock. Thank you for getting us to 250 likes. Come on. We are like 25 subscribers away on the Awesemo NFL Twitter. Go help us out. Get us there. Get us to 10,000. We just hit 27,000 this weekend on the main account. This is what helps the shows be free. If we can have a social media presence, we can bring in new people. We can convert them to be users, and then they'll want to be paying members. If you guys want to come in and be a paying member, you can get one more day of NBA for just $1. All access NBA, promo code Caruso. You get the content through the 29th. If you were sitting on that since the beginning of preseason, I don't know what to do with you, but that was just $1. And then the other thing we've got is some showdowns coming up. So contrary to popular belief, there is Sunday night football on week 17 every year. They don't put it on the schedule because the NFL looks across the landscape and picks the best game to put on there. It's going to be the Washington football team going against Philadelphia Eagles. And then, as I mentioned, we're going to have 3 NFL playoff games for each the Saturday and Sundays of the first 2 weekends. Come in with the NFL Express package. It's $3.95 a week, no special promo code. You get all of our showdown content. You get the projections, you get the ownership, you get everything. You also get most of it, with the exception of player ownership. That's really it. You can do everything else. $3.95 a week. What are you waiting for? All right. With that, did you see one again? Back to the beginning. Shout out, Melissa took down tied, but took down the Quarter Arcade. Good for her. We had several other screenshots. Someone put about $490 into 20,000. I'm rounding a little bit thereabouts, but some phenomenal screenshots for you guys last night. I'm happy that you guys got there. That is just absolutely amazing. Share those with us. It's always fun to see it. Makes Kyle and I feel good because we slog through all of this stuff for you guys. It's our creative outlet. We enjoy it, but we like to know people read it, consume it, and then are able to utilize it for the forces of good. Kyle sometimes likes you to use it for the forces of chaos, not evil, just the forces of chaos. But with that, we're going to get on out of here. Follow that Awesemo Twitter handle, Awesemo NFL, main account, Awesemo_COM. You can follow Kyle at Kyle Tweets Here, and I am at EMac DFS. With that, gamers, good luck.